Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and today we are doing something a bit different. You may or may not have noticed that I am absolutely terrible at responding to comments. I'll do it every now and again, but what usually happens is I'll see them in the notifications, I'll read them, and then go, I'll answer that later. And it just never happens, I just never get round to it. So this is a chance to go back and have a look at some of the views of my viewers and discuss them properly on a video, and you can comment, leave your thoughts, go back to the old videos and leave your thoughts there. Generally this is just about having a chat, and we're all just going to have a chat together. I thought that would be fun. So I am going to go back to the British Grand Prix up into, I don't know what video I'm going to go up to, but we'll do a load, see how we get on, and that's it. That'll be the concept. And if you like this, we'll do it again in the future. I might even go further back and forward. We'll answer loads of questions. So with that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and let's go and have a look at the questions from my Fromies. I'm going to make that stick, shut up. Okay, first one from Chris Thomas 2644.
Nico Rosberg won 7 in a row against Hamilton at the end of 2015 and start of 2016. That's impressive. As for Max, he doesn't have many off weekends, he is programmed to win.
Well, first off, I like how you make Max Verstappen sound like an absolute robot. And yes, he is definitely programmed to win. But you are completely right, I forgot that Nico Rosberg won 7 in a row. That was a mega achievement in the time of Lewis Hamilton's domination of the sport. And beyond that, Seb Vettel was only, 4 years before that? 3 years before that? So we had these two massive run-off wins in a very short space of time, and we've had to wait over half a decade for another one. Max Verstappen is on 8, so he's really hitting those highs as well. Regular contributor Vince065US.
Sir Lewis doesn't have time on his side. F1 is going through a youth movement. Sir Lewis needs to finish out the season and retire. What else does he have to prove? Sir Lewis has been showing his slip the past 2 years and he needs to retire. It's time for someone else to enjoy the highs and lows of the sport.
Vince is always leaving comments and I always read them, and I really should get back to him, and I apologise for not doing that. You are 100% right, and I completely agree with you. Lewis Hamilton is nearly 40. Obviously he is younger than Fernando Alonso, but Hamilton has won 7 championships, he's broken records. There are plenty of young guys in Formula 1 and still yet to be in Formula 1 who deserve a place. And Lewis Hamilton being there is just taking up that space now. And he's not reaching the highs he once did. So absolutely he should step aside at the end of this season. Guarantee he won't. Here's more on Max Verstappen from Nikki Decker 89.
If there are no issues with the car, I don't see why Verstappen couldn't go past 9 wins in a row and beyond. Like you said, Verstappen and Red Bull are a deadly combination at the moment. And I don't expect to see any challenges this season.
It's a little disappointing that there are no expectations for Verstappen to have any real challenges this year, and we're just barely over the halfway point. And at this point, I think he'd only won 4 or 5. So you saying he definitely has the power to get 9. We're on 8, so we're definitely close. And next week we could talk about him having his 9th in a row. So again, very correct. My viewers are very clever. And to finish off with this first video, a little cheeky one from Nielst Hart 4154.
Nothing happened. You probably watched another race, dude. Tears of joy, tears of joy.
I actually went back and watched the highlights of this race, and what exactly did I miss? Norris led from Verstappen at the start, so that was good for a couple of laps. There was some interesting battles as Hamilton climbed his way through the field. But the safety car completely ruined this race. Anything intriguing going on before that was just ended. We had some good battling between Norris and Hamilton. There were some good battles in the midfield over the last 10 laps. But in general, I would say about 5 laps of this race was actually exciting. So less than 10%. Maybe it's one of the better Grand Prix of 2023. But that is a very low bar. Long-time commentator Tony Rata says,
There is possibly another, more cynical explanation for Helmut Marko's decision to use Ricciardo. He doesn't need to throw a lot of money at him. McLaren are still paying his salary until the end of the year. I don't know if Marko is quite so cynical, but it achieves two ends. He gets rid of a driver he doesn't want and replaces him with the driver he wants for a bargain price. And he gets to put Perez under real pressure to perform. What happens to Ricciardo if Perez keeps his drive? Does he stay at AlphaTauri and hope for a more competitive car? There are no other top teams who will give him a seat.
So I think his only choice is what's in front of him, and Marko knows that. I think we can look forward to Marko playing one off against the other for the next few months.
Maybe I'm the cynical one, but Marko has a history of this kind of shenanigan, so it wouldn't surprise me in the least. As for Tsunoda, he's a Honda-sponsored driver and there is only 1 year left before Honda departs Red Bull. If I were him, I would want some improvement before the midpoint of next season. Or he might be the next mid-season axing. Red Bull won't have to worry what Honda wants by then, and we all know how ruthless they can be. It will be an interesting next 6 to 8 months. Cheers.
Yeah, Helmut Marko has a very interesting reputation in Formula 1. I think even Christian Horner has described him as a bit of a loose cannon, but underneath that very, very harsh exterior lies the mind of a genius. This is the man who discovered Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen, and therefore is part of the reason Red Bull have been so successful in the last 15 years. Helmut Marko could possibly be evil. In fact, I know a lot of drivers have spoken out against him, especially young drivers in the Red Bull program. But what they see as harsh, it might seem brutal, but it's worked. And cutting Nick de Vries for Daniel Ricciardo for nefarious reasons is entirely plausible, if not probable. I don't know what this means for Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo. He hasn't had a great start with AlphaTauri, but I don't think that car's really where it should be. And Helmut Marko has said that for 2024 they are going to copy Red Bull as much as the rules allow. Whether Yuki Tsunoda's there or not without Honda's backing, it's hard to say. I don't know if any other team would pick him up, but this might be his last chance in Formula 1. Daniel Ricciardo putting pressure on Sergio Perez, it's plausible, not just because of Helmut Marko and Christian Horner, but also he is one of Max Verstappen's best friends. But really, until anything happens on that front, it's hard to say. Okay, next we have Lewis8552 talking about the Formula E race in Rome.
First race was hectic. Glad everyone was fine in that bird crash. Second race was okay, but it being shorter also meant there was less intrigue in the energy strategy. I also think this version of the Rome track makes it quite a bit harder to set up and overtake. I think if they had the old first sector, we'd maybe see a bit more wheel-to-wheel action. Looks like Dennis for the championship unless he messes it up or a rogue Jag takes him out. Part of me hopes that does happen in race 1 so we get a title showdown for the last race. A shame the final race has to be at London, where it's going to be impossible to overtake.
I think you did a better job summing it up than I did in my video, but I will say you called it Jake Dennis was the champion, but it was a shame it didn't go to the final race and it didn't take a Jaguar ploughing into someone, which was strange because we've seen it at most races in Formula E in 2023, but it was Envision's, dodgy tactics, almost Ferrari Formula 1 style tactics really. But I don't mind the fact they can't overtake at London because it's such a strange track, just going inside and out. It's quite a spectacle, but maybe it isn't the best place for a finale, and I don't really see how they can change that. There's not really any space to expand it. So maybe it is a bit restrictive. But, I mean, Formula E, it's not too often you see a Formula E race without at least some overtaking. And we did see it. And maybe that's where attack mode does help, because obviously it swaps cars around. That leads to the slower cars getting ahead of the faster cars at times. But yeah, I think maybe London isn't the best place for the final round of the championship. Next up we have RC Paint Service.
Nice to see a Danish driver doing well in Indy cars.
Yes, and with Christian Rasmussen leading the way in Indy NXT, he could have company very, very soon in IndyCar. And back to our old friend Vince.
The silly season's in full swing.
Yeah, and has anyone involved actually scored any points yet? And another one from Vince.
I have a question. Does Max not having won the pole show that Red Bull's slip is showing?
Absolutely not. I think my memory's not great, but didn't he cross the right line and have a lap time deleted, and therefore his fast run was a bit more conservative than it otherwise would have been? As I said, my memory's not great on that one. I could be making that up. But he won the race by like 30 seconds and with complete ease. So no, I don't think that's any sign that Red Bull are having a slip. And our next one is from Ronald de Roige, 1774.
Verstappen had 30 seconds on Norris. He said he wanted to look into the speed of the RBR, he said afterwards. That is how dominant Verstappen and RBR are.
Yeah, their dominance is pretty incredible at this point. And finally, D. Murphy 1578.
America, baby. America.
And anyway, I think the monster trucks are creating a new environment for rock and roll. And America. I'll just sit my down.
So the first one on the WRC from Afro Patriots.
Maybe Fiat with a 500X. If WRC were to electric, it might open up the door for other manufacturers to enter or even return.
Yeah, my only concern is no series has made electric work yet. And in fact, most series have collapsed when they've gone full electric. And one from Port Llwyd. So I can't speak Welsh.
Would love to see Renault 5EV, Fiat 500e, Peugeot 208e in an electric rally championship as a support category. Regarding WRC, I wonder what the incentive is these days for manufacturers to enter. Manufacturers are moving to electric. It's inevitable. The question is, if the WRC cars aren't electric, how will they create a link between the cars on the stages and the cars on the road? Hydrogen is good for motorsport, but it doesn't look like it will be appropriate for road cars in the short term at least. Sustainable fuels aren't likely to take off in a major way either for roads cars. WRC faces a more uncertain future than ever. Hopefully the big brains at the FIA figure it out. I think the common safety cell was a good step forward.
Yeah, I think really this covers the same point that if you're going to go full electric, there are issues. I think if you look at World Rallycross, a fire has destroyed a team and 3 races have been postponed whilst they investigate it. And it kind of brings up the problem that electric is quite dangerous. Once it's on fire, it's very hard to stop it being on fire. And there's also rules in Formula 1 and with the hypercars in WEC where at certain points you can't touch them because if you do they might electrocute you. That's obviously not great from a safety point of view, but if it is what manufacturers want and you're going to make it work, I think WRC would be best to set up a secondary category first and maybe run shorter stages, maybe have more, service areas. And the issue with that is that all needs to be transported around, which isn't very economical either. So I think electric in the WRC is always going to be very difficult, and I don't know if there are any alternatives. Hybrid is probably best from a logistics point of view. Now, there were a lot of comments on this British Touring Car video, so I'm not going to go into all of them. Actually, everyone was very, very civil, and there were some absolutely fantastic ideas in those comment section. A lot of people said the hybrid's the problem. Other people brought up other things as well, and it has changed my mind a little bit, in that maybe it's not the hybrid. Maybe that just needs more time to be integrated better. They just haven't gone the right way around it. New rules, they can change things up, it might get better. But I think one of the things I did get from this is that a lot of people think that the British touring cars has stagnated over the last few years and needs to be changed up, and that I completely agree with. But there was one person who went out of his way to make sure he got to tell everybody his feelings, and that is Bert 1981. This absolute toadstool had left about 30-40 comments, mostly replying to other people, and it's the most stupid, just utterly garbage, rubbish, trash, whatever you want to call it. These are some terrible takes. I mean, most of the time he's just repeating the same things anyway, but completely ignoring anyone's arguments. He thinks he's right, and it's hilarious. This is what a virgin looks like. This man has not felt the touch of a woman and is unlikely to in the future. So, if you really want a fun time, read through the comments. There's some really good ones. There are some funny ones. And we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so our final one is the Belgian Grand Prix video, and CG9873 is apparently shocked that I still enjoy Formula 1.
You can't think F1 is any good still.
Well, it has been pretty tedious, but I must get something out of it because I watch it every time it's on. And it's not just for this channel. Willy Van Loon 1440 has a different opinion.
Yes, I do.
Love the optimism, I presume you're Dutch. And finally, Don Brash sucks.
Max is going to give the whole field a good ol' spanking in 23 tears of joy.
He already has, son. He already has.
So that was me answering your questions, and honestly, I do read your comments, I do enjoy them, I'm not very good at answering them back, and this was just a different idea, new content, see if we can find a fun way to get back to you, and why not? The other thing I want to do with these videos is maybe promote some older videos that didn't get enough love the first time round, and so this time I'm asking you to go back and look at this video I did about Lancia a long time ago. It only got like 30 views when it was first uploaded. There's a link in the description and I'll put it on the end screen. This is just a love letter to Lancia, basically, just talking about the different variants of their cars in motorsport, and as you know, I do love a Lancia. So make sure you go back and watch that. Thank you very much for watching and leaving your comments. Subscribe, we're nearly at 1,000, so thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.